Block 1. The scent of leather and subtle cologne filled my nostrils as I sank into the wide seat, a stark contrast to the stale, recycled air that typically greeted me on flights. I hadn't slept in 36 hours. The endless string of double shifts at the hospital had left me in a fog of exhaustion so thick I could barely remember my own name, much less my seat assignment. All I knew was that I needed to get to Chicago for my sister's wedding, and that meant enduring this 3-hour flight in whatever cramped economy seat I'd been assigned. 9C, I muttered to myself as I squinted at my crumpled boarding pass, the numbers blurring before my tired eyes. I'd been so distracted after security, fumbling with my shoes, laptop, and the notification that my landlord was raising my rent again, that I'd barely registered the gate change announcement. By the time I'd made it to the correct gate, pre-boarding had already finished, and I'd rushed onto the plane in a daze, following the flow of passengers until I found an empty aisle seat. The seat was impossibly comfortable. Too comfortable. I ran my fingers along the supple leather armrest, noting how much space stretched between me and the window seat passenger. A silver-haired businessman already lost in his tablet. No one sat in the middle seat, creating a luxurious buffer I wasn't accustomed to in my usual flying experience. "Can I get you something to drink before takeoff?" A flight attendant appeared beside me, her smile professional and polished. I blinked, surprised by the pre-flight service. "Just water, please," I replied, suddenly aware of my parched throat. She nodded and returned moments later with crystal glassware, not the plastic cup I'd expected, filled with ice water and garnished with a lemon slice. I accepted it with a confused thank you, wondering if the airline had upgraded their service since my last flight. The cabin filled gradually around me. I noticed the passengers boarding now looked different. Tailored suits, expensive watches, designer luggage being efficiently stowed. A cold sensation crept up my spine as realization dawned. I frantically looked at the seat markers and then back at my ticket. "Oh my God," I whispered, my stomach dropping. I wasn't in 9C, I was in 1C. First class. I'd walked right past economy and seated myself in the premium cabin without even noticing. Heat rushed to my face. I was about to stand up and explain my mistake to the flight attendant when the air around me seemed to change. It was subtle, like the shift in atmospheric pressure before a storm, but unmistakable. A presence behind me, heavy, deliberate, commanding. I felt him before I saw him. The scent came first, expensive and subtle, not overpowering but undeniably present. Then the shadow fell across me as someone stopped in the aisle beside my seat. I turned, apology already forming on my lips. The words died in my throat. He stood there, perfectly still, dark eyes assessing me with such intensity that I felt physically pinned to my seat. His suit was black and impeccably tailored, highlighting broad shoulders and a frame that seemed designed for both boardroom dominance and physical intimidation. A heavy watch gleamed at his wrist. Not flashy, but unmistakably costly. Everything about him spoke of power held in deliberate reserve. But it was his eyes that froze me, dark, almost black. They held mine with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Not anger, not amusement, but something calculating and measured. He wasn't alone. A broad-shouldered man in a dark suit stood several paces behind him, eyes constantly scanning the cabin, hand positioned oddly over his chest in a way that suggested readiness. "Excuse me," I began, voice embarrassingly small. "I think I'm in the wrong—" He leaned down, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath against my ear. His voice was low, carrying an accent I couldn't place. Something Eastern European that added a threatening edge to his perfectly articulated words. "Stay seated." Not a request, a command. I gripped the armrests, knuckles whitening. "But this isn't my seat. I'm supposed to be in economy." His hand came to rest on the back of my seat, the casual gesture somehow intensely proprietary. A heavy signet ring caught the light, gold with some dark insignia I couldn't make out. I said, "Stay seated." His voice remained quiet, but there was steel beneath the velvet. "It's taken care of." The flight attendant who had served me earlier approached, her eyes darting nervously between us. "Mr. Sokolov, your usual seat." He didn't look at her, his gaze still locked on mine. "There's been a change. I'll take 1A today." the window seat directly beside mine. My associate will take 2A. He nodded toward the man behind him. The flight attendant's smile faltered just slightly before professional training reasserted itself. Of course, Mr. Sokolov, right away. I sat rigid as the man, Sokolov, settled beside me, his movements economical and controlled. The businessman who had been in the window seat was already being escorted to another seat, not uttering a word of protest. I watched in stunned silence as Sokolov's associate took the seat behind him, positioning himself like a sentry. "What's your name?" Sokolov asked, his attention now on his phone, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. I swallowed hard. Emma Reynolds. "Where are you going, Emma Reynolds?" He still didn't look up. "Chicago. My sister's getting married." I didn't know why I added that detail. Perhaps a desperate attempt to humanize myself to this man who radiated danger. He finally turned those dark eyes back to me, studying my face with disturbing thoroughness. "You're exhausted." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "Double shifts at the hospital. I'm a nurse." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, perhaps, or interest. He raised a hand, and instantly a flight attendant appeared. "Bring Ms. Reynolds a proper pillow and blanket," he ordered. "And whatever she wants to drink." "That's really not," I began. "You need rest." He cut me off, the finality in his tone brooking no argument. I dislike watching people suffer unnecessarily. The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me, coming from a man who exuded menace from every pore. But fatigue was crashing over me in waves, and the prospect of fighting both my exhaustion and this intimidating stranger seemed impossible. The cabin door closed with a decisive thunk. The safety demonstration began, but Sokolov ignored it, his attention back on his phone. I caught glimpses of what looked like security footage and financial figures before he angled the screen away from my view. "Why?" I finally whispered as the plane began to taxi. "Why are you doing this?" He glanced at me. One dark eyebrow arched. Perhaps I dislike seeing people removed from comfort they've already claimed. A pause then, with a coldness that made my blood freeze. Or perhaps I prefer keeping my enemies close, and strangers closer. The engines roared as we accelerated down the runway. I gripped the armrests tighter, closing my eyes against the pressure of takeoff and the weight of his words. When I opened them again, he was watching me, something almost predatory in his gaze. "Afraid of flying, Ms. Reynolds?" "Afraid of the company," I replied before I could stop myself. To my surprise, the corner of his mouth twitched upward, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement of my small act of defiance. "Smart girl," he murmured. "Instincts are important." The fasten seatbelt sign dinged off. Sokolov immediately unbuckled his, turning slightly toward me, one arm stretched along the back of my seat in a posture that felt possessive. "Tell me about this wedding," he said, his tone making it clear it wasn't small talk, but an interrogation. I hesitated, wondering how much information was safe to share. "My younger sister, Lily, she's marrying her college sweetheart. I'm the maid of honor." "And the groom? What does he do?" "He's in finance, works for Wellington Capital in Chicago." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Something dangerous flashed in Sokolov's eyes. "Wellington Capital," he repeated slowly. "Interesting coincidence, is it?" My mouth had gone dry. He didn't answer, instead studying me with renewed intensity. "When did you last speak with your sister?" 2 days ago. "Why?" "And she's happy with this match?" The question was odd, loaded with implication I couldn't decipher. "Very. They've been together for years," he nodded, seemingly satisfied for the moment. The flight attendant returned with a plush pillow, soft blanket, and a glass of what looked like expensive champagne. "I didn't ask for," I began. "Drink," Sokolov instructed. "It will help you sleep." Warning bells clanged in my head. "I don't drink with strangers." Something like respect flickered across his face. Wise policy. He took the glass himself, sipping it before handing it back to me. "Not poisoned, I assure you." The gesture was both reassuring and terrifying in its implication. What kind of man casually addresses poisoning concerns? "Mr. Sokolov," I began, desperate to establish some normalcy. "I appreciate whatever strings you pulled to let me stay in this seat, but I'm perfectly fine going back to economy where I belong." His expression hardened. "Where you belong," he repeated, the words carrying a weight I didn't understand. "That remains to be seen, doesn't it?" My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, grateful for the distraction, only to find a text from an unknown number. "Don't mention Wellington Capital again. Delete this message." My head snapped up, eyes wide. Sokolov was looking out the window, seemingly disinterested, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. I deleted the message with trembling fingers. "Something wrong?" he asked without turning. "No," I lied, the word sticking in my throat. "You're a poor liar, Emma Reynolds. We'll have to work on that." The casual implication that we'd have any future interaction sent a chill down my spine. "I don't understand what's happening," I admitted. "What do you want from me?" He turned back to me, expression unreadable. "Right now? For you to rest. You look like you might collapse, and I find that inconvenient." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He answered it with a curt, "Da," before continuing in what I recognized as Russian, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone conveyed clear threat. I took the opportunity to study him more carefully. He was older than I'd initially thought, mid-40s perhaps, with threads of silver at his temples that only enhanced his intimidating presence. A thin scar ran along his jawline, barely visible unless you were looking closely. His hands were both elegant and powerful, not a laborer's hands, but those of a man who was no stranger to violence. He ended the call abruptly and caught me watching him. Instead of looking away, I held his gaze, determined not to show more fear than I already had. "Who are you?" I asked directly. "Someone you should be grateful to for now." He nodded toward the pillow. "Sleep, Emma. The conversation will be more productive when your mind is clear. I can't just sleep with—" I stopped myself, realizing how that sounded. A ghost of amusement crossed his features. "With a dangerous man watching over you? Perhaps not yet, but you will learn." The casual certainty in his voice sent a fresh wave of panic through me. What had I stumbled into? What did Wellington Capital have to do with anything? And why did this powerful, dangerous man seem so interested in my sister's wedding? I didn't realize I was shivering until he draped the blanket across my lap, his fingers brushing against mine in a gesture that seemed almost gentle. "Rest," he said again, his voice softer now but no less commanding. "I'll wake you before we land." Against my better judgment, exhaustion was winning. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, and the comfortable seat cradled me like a treacherous embrace. The last thing I saw before sleep claimed me was Sokolov's dark, watchful gaze and the slight curve of his mouth. Not quite a smile, not quite a threat, but a promise of something I couldn't yet understand. And in that moment of surrender to fatigue, one terrifying thought crystallized in my mind. Whatever game was being played, I had unwittingly become a piece on the board, and the man beside me was most definitely a king, not a pawn. I woke with a start, momentarily disoriented. The gentle hum of engines surrounded me, and my cheek rested against something firm yet comfortable. As consciousness returned, horror dawned. I'd fallen asleep against Sokolov's shoulder. I jerked upright, heart hammering. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Be still." His voice was low, almost gentle. "You needed the rest." Embarrassment burned through me as I realized my hand had been curled against his suit jacket. I pulled away, straightening in my seat, trying to regain some semblance of dignity. The cabin lights had been dimmed, suggesting I'd been asleep for some time. "How long was I out?" I asked, my voice scratchy. "Nearly 2 hours." He checked his watch. The same understated yet clearly expensive timepiece I'd noticed earlier. "We begin our descent in 20 minutes. 2 hours of vulnerability in the presence of this man. The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine. "You talk in your sleep," he remarked casually, his eyes returning to the tablet in his hand. "Interesting things about your sister." My blood turned to ice. What did I say? He gave me a measured look, that she seemed afraid on your last call. That something felt wrong. I swallowed hard. I hadn't consciously acknowledged it until that moment. But he was right. During our last conversation, Lily had sounded strained, her usual exuberance replaced with something more reserved. I'd attributed it to pre-wedding stress. But now, hearing my own subconscious concerns voiced by this dangerous stranger, doubt crept in. "It's just wedding nerves," I said, more to convince myself than him. Sokolov made a non-committal sound, his attention seemingly on his tablet, but I could feel his awareness of me like a physical touch. Nothing about this man was casual or coincidental. "Why are you so interested in my sister's wedding?" I finally asked. He set his tablet down and turned those penetrating eyes on me. "I'm not interested in her wedding. I'm interested in her fiancé, James Preston." He spoke the name with subtle but unmistakable contempt. "And by extension, I'm now interested in you." My pulse quickened. "What does James have to do with anything? He's just a financial analyst. Is that what he told your sister?" A cold smile touched his lips, but didn't reach his eyes. "James Preston is the son of Howard Preston, Wellington Capital's founder, and Howard Preston owes me a significant debt. One he's been avoiding paying. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This has nothing to do with me or my sister." "It has everything to do with your sister now that she's marrying into that family." His voice hardened. "The Prestons have stolen from me, Miss Reynolds. I don't forgive theft." Fear clutched at my throat. "Are you threatening my sister?" "No." His answer was immediate and firm. "I'm telling you that she may be walking into danger without knowing it. The Preston family has enemies, powerful ones, beyond just me." The flight attendant appeared before I could respond, offering refreshments before landing. Sokolov ordered coffee for both of us, dismissing her with a slight nod. "I don't understand what this has to do with me," I said when she'd gone. "Or why you're telling me this." He studied me with calculating intensity. "Tell me, Emma, how well do you know James Preston?" I hesitated. The truth was, I'd only met James twice, once briefly at Christmas and again at the engagement dinner 6 months ago. He'd been charming but somewhat distant, citing work commitments when I'd tried to engage him in conversation about his background. "Not well," I admitted reluctantly. Satisfaction flickered across Sokolov's face. "And yet you're the maid of honor at a wedding where your sister is marrying a man whose family is deeply entangled with some of the most dangerous people in Chicago." I felt sick. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting nothing. I'm stating facts." He accepted the coffee from the returning flight attendant, then continued once we were alone again. "Wellington Capital launders money for several criminal organizations. They've recently made the mistake of skimming funds, including mine." My hands trembled as I lifted my own coffee cup. "You're a criminal." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "I'm a businessman with diverse interests. The legality of those interests varies depending on which government you ask." His voice lowered. "But I have one rule that never changes. I protect what's mine. And what does that have to do with me?" I whispered. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unsettling gentleness. "You sat in my seat, Emma Reynolds. Sometimes fate has interesting ways of bringing useful people into my path." I recoiled from his touch. "I'm not useful to you. On the contrary. You're the perfect way for me to observe the Preston family up close." His expression darkened. "There will be powerful, dangerous people at that wedding, people who wouldn't typically allow someone like me near them, but the maid of honor and her +1? Much less scrutiny." Realization dawned, horror close behind. "You can't possibly expect me to—" "I expect you to ensure your sister's safety," he cut in sharply. "The Prestons have angered people far less forgiving than me. If you want to protect her, you'll accept my help." "Your help," I repeated incredulously. "You're threatening me. I'm offering you protection. There's a difference." His voice softened marginally. "If I wanted to threaten you, Emma, you wouldn't mistake it for anything else." The plane began its descent, the change in pressure making my ears pop. Outside the window, Chicago's skyline emerged through wisps of cloud, the late afternoon sun glinting off glass towers. Somewhere in that sprawl of humanity was my sister, blissfully unaware of the danger this man claimed surrounded her future husband. "I don't believe you," I said finally. "This could all be lies." Sokolov smiled thinly, a reasonable suspicion. He slid his phone toward me. "Perhaps this will convince you." On the screen was a news article from 6 months ago. a Wellington Capital executive found dead in an apparent suicide. Below it was a police report that certainly hadn't been released to the public, detailing inconsistencies in the death scene. "How did you get this?" I whispered. "I have resources." He took the phone back. That man was the last person who tried to alert authorities about Wellington's activities. The official ruling was suicide. It wasn't. Cold fear settled in my stomach. "What do you want from me?" "Your cooperation." His voice was matter-of-fact. "You will introduce me as your boyfriend at all wedding events. You will not alert your sister or anyone else to my true identity. In return, I will ensure no harm comes to you or your sister during my investigation." "And if I refuse?" His expression remained unchanged, but something in his eyes chilled me to the bone. Then I walk away. I focus solely on retrieving what's mine from the Prestons through my usual channels. And your sister becomes collateral damage in a war she doesn't even know exists. The plane touched down with a jolt, the engines roaring as we decelerated along the runway. Passengers around us began gathering belongings, but Sokolov remained motionless, waiting for my answer. "You're asking me to lie to my sister," I said, my voice barely audible over the aircraft noises. "I'm asking you to protect her," he corrected. "Sometimes protection requires deception." The seatbelt sign dinged off. All around us, passengers stood, eager to disembark. Sokolov remained seated, his gaze unwavering. "Time to decide, Emma." I thought of Lily, her excitement about the wedding, her dreams for the future, the subtle strain I'd detected in her voice during our last call. If even a fraction of what Sokolov claimed was true. "Fine," I whispered, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "I'll do it." Something like approval flickered across his face as he finally stood, buttoning his suit jacket with one fluid motion. Wise choice. His associate appeared at the end of our row, somehow having already retrieved luggage from the overhead compartments. He handed Sokolov a sleek leather briefcase while keeping my carry-on bag himself. "This is Alexei," Sokolov said, nodding toward the stone-faced man. "He'll be accompanying us." "Us?" I echoed, standing on shaky legs. "I'm staying with my sister at the hotel." "Change of plans." Sokolov's hand came to rest on the small of my back, guiding me toward the exit, with surprising gentleness that nonetheless felt like a shackle. "You'll be staying at my residence in Chicago. We have preparations to make if we're to be convincing as a couple." Panic flared. "I can't just disappear. My sister's expecting me." "Call her," he replied smoothly. "Tell her you've met someone, that you'll still be at the rehearsal dinner tomorrow, but with a guest. Women find new romance exciting, do they not? She'll be delighted for you." We emerged from the jetway into the terminal, immediately flanked by 2 more suits, security personnel who materialized as if from nowhere, creating a protective formation around Sokolov. One of them took my bag from Alexei, handling it with impersonal efficiency. "This is kidnapping," I hissed under my breath as Sokolov guided me through the terminal, his hand still pressed against my back. "This is protection," he corrected, his voice equally low. "You'll have your own suite, complete privacy when desired, and my word that no harm will come to you. But make no mistake, Emma." His fingers tightened slightly, a subtle reminder of his strength. "You are now under my care, and I take my responsibilities very seriously." The terminal blurred around me, polished floors, hurrying passengers, the ambient noise of announcements and reunions. None of it seemed real. I felt suspended in some bizarre alternate reality where I'd traded my freedom for my sister's safety to a man who radiated danger from every pore. We bypassed the baggage claim entirely, exiting through a private security checkpoint where guards nodded deferentially to Sokolov without checking any identification. Outside, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows waited at the curb, the driver already holding the door open. "Your luggage will be collected and delivered to the house," Sokolov informed me as he guided me into the vehicle's plush interior. "If there's anything else you need, it will be provided." I sank into the leather seat, numb with shock and fear. Sokolov settled beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Alexei and another security man took the seats facing us, their expressions unreadable, as the vehicle pulled smoothly into traffic. I stared out at Chicago's skyline, the familiar city suddenly alien and threatening. Somewhere out there, my sister was excitedly preparing for what should have been the happiest day of her life, unaware that her future husband's family had entangled her in a deadly web. "One question," I said, finally breaking the heavy silence. "Why didn't you just approach my sister directly? Why this elaborate charade with me?" Sokolov's expression softened almost imperceptibly, because the moment I approached your sister, she would tell her fiancé, and then both she and I would be in immediate danger. He studied me with those penetrating eyes. "You, however, have demonstrated admirable discretion and courage. You recognized what I am instantly, and yet you didn't panic or create a scene. You evaluated your options, made a decision to protect your sister, and acted on it." A faint smile touched his lips. "Those are valuable traits, Emma Reynolds." Something in his tone made me shiver, not entirely from fear. "I'm a nurse," I said quietly. "I'm trained to stay calm in emergencies." "Is that what I am? An emergency?" There was a hint of amusement in his voice. I met his gaze directly. "You're a catastrophe I'm trying to contain." To my surprise, he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his severe features momentarily. "I think we'll work well together, Emma." The SUV turned onto Michigan Avenue, flowing seamlessly through traffic as if invisible forces were clearing our path. Perhaps they were. I was beginning to understand that Sokolov's influence extended far beyond what I could see. My phone vibrated with an incoming call. Lily's face lit up my screen, her smile frozen in digital happiness. I looked up at Sokolov. A silent question. He nodded once. "Answer it. Remember our arrangement." I took a deep breath and accepted the call, forcing brightness into my voice that I was far from feeling. "Lily, I just landed." "Emma," my sister's voice bubbled with excitement. "I can't wait to see you. James's parents are hosting a small gathering tonight. Just family. I know you must be exhausted, but could you possibly come? They're dying to meet you properly." Sokolov's eyes narrowed at the mention of the Prestons. I swallowed hard. "Actually, Lily, something's happened," I began, launching into the first lie of many to come. "I've met someone. On the flight." As I spun a sanitized version of my whirlwind romance with the dangerous man beside me, I watched Sokolov's face. Satisfaction gleamed in those dark eyes, along with something more complex, a possessiveness that both terrified and, God help me, intrigued me. What had I gotten myself into? And more importantly, would either my sister or I emerge from this unscathed? The Sokolov residence was not what I expected. I'd imagined some ostentatious mansion, dripping with gaudy displays of wealth. Instead, the SUV pulled up to a sleek modernist structure of glass, steel, and stone, nestled on a secluded stretch of lakefront property. Discreet security measures were visible to my now hyper-aware eyes, cameras disguised as architectural elements, grounds designed to eliminate blind spots, a gatehouse where armed men nodded respectfully as our vehicle passed. "Home, sweet home," I muttered as Alexei opened the car door for me. Sokolov's mouth quirked into that not-quite smile I was beginning to recognize. "One of them," he replied. "I maintain residences in several cities." Of course he did. Men like him never stayed in one place too long. The interior was minimalist, yet luxurious. Soaring ceilings, museum-quality art, furnishings that looked both beautiful and functional. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, the water shimmering with late-afternoon light. Despite the open design, the space felt like a fortress. A woman in her 50s approached us, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore simple black clothing and carried herself with quiet dignity. "Ms. Reynolds, this is Mrs. Petrova," Sokolov introduced her. "She manages the household. If you need anything, she will provide it." Mrs. Petrova gave me a formal nod. "Your suite has been prepared, miss. Your luggage will arrive shortly. Would you care for refreshments after your journey?" The normalcy of the question in this surreal situation almost made me laugh. "Just water, thank you. Show Ms. Reynolds to the East Suite," Sokolov instructed her. "I'll join you shortly," he added to me. "There are matters requiring my attention first." Mrs. Petrova led me through the house, her movements efficient and purposeful. I noted security personnel positioned discreetly throughout, Not obvious unless you were looking for them. We ascended a floating staircase to the second floor, then down a hallway to a set of double doors. "Your accommodations," she announced, opening the doors to reveal a suite that could have occupied the entire floor of my apartment building. A sitting room with its own fireplace flowed into a bedroom dominated by a massive bed draped in crisp white linens. Beyond that, glass doors opened onto a private terrace overlooking the lake. The bathroom was a marble sanctuary with a soaking tub large enough to swim in and a shower encased in seamless glass. "It's excessive," I managed, overwhelmed by the luxury that now felt like another form of cage. "Mr. Sokolov values comfort," Mrs. Petrova replied, her tone neutral. She moved to a closet, opening it to reveal several garments already hanging inside. "Some items for your immediate needs. Your personal belongings will be delivered soon." I approached the closet, running my fingers over silks, cashmeres, and fine cottons, all in my size. "How did he—" "Mr. Sokolov is thorough," she interrupted, answering my unfinished question. She placed a small device on the bedside table. "This is an internal house phone. Press 1 for me, 2 for security, 3 for Mr. Sokolov directly. Dinner will be served at 8. Is there anything else you require?" My throat tightened with a sudden wave of emotion. "My freedom?" Mrs. Petrova's severe expression softened slightly. "We are all bound by something, Miss Reynolds." She moved toward the door. "Rest. Change. The bathroom is fully stocked with toiletries." After she left, I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, the enormity of my situation crashing over me. I was effectively a prisoner in a gilded cage, my cooperation secured through thinly veiled threats against my sister. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was truth in Sokolov's warnings about the Prestons. The news article he'd shown me had seemed genuine. And if Wellington Capital was indeed involved in money laundering, then my sister was unknowingly walking into a dangerous situation. My phone chimed with a text from Lily. "Can't wait to meet your mystery man tomorrow. James says to bring him to the pre-rehearsal brunch too. So excited for you." I stared at her message, guilt and fear twisting inside me. What would she think if she knew the truth? That her maid of honor was now entangled with a man who was essentially a crime lord? That her future in-laws might be criminals themselves? After sending a non-committal reply, I dragged myself to the shower, hoping the hot water might wash away some of the tension coiled within me. The bathroom was stocked with high-end toiletries, the kind I'd sample at department stores but never actually buy. I stood under the rainfall showerhead, letting scalding water pound against my skin until it turned pink. I emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a plush robe, to find my luggage had been delivered and unpacked, my modest belongings looking out of place in the luxury suite. The dress I'd brought for the rehearsal dinner had been steamed and hung prominently in the closet, a simple navy blue cocktail dress that now seemed hopelessly inadequate compared to the designer items surrounding it. A soft knock at the door startled me. I clutched the robe tighter around myself. "Yes?" "May I enter?" Sokolov's voice, despite its softness, carried an expectation of compliance. I hesitated, then replied, "Give me a moment." I quickly pulled on jeans and a sweater from my suitcase, running fingers through my damp hair before opening the door. Sokolov had changed into more casual attire, though casual for him still meant tailored dark trousers and a crisp white shirt open at the collar. Without his suit jacket, I could see the lean strength of his build more clearly, and the subtle bulge of a shoulder holster partially concealed beneath his shirt. He carried a flat velvet box in one hand and a folder in the other. "You look refreshed," he observed, his eyes taking in my appearance with that same unsettling thoroughness. "Being kidnapped does wonders for the complexion," I replied dryly. Something like amusement flickered in his eyes as he entered the suite, uninvited. "You agreed to come, Emma. Let's not rewrite history. Under duress." "Under protection," he corrected, setting the folder on a side table. "We need to establish our story before tomorrow's events." I crossed my arms defensively. "What story?" "How we met. How I swept you off your feet so thoroughly that you'd bring me to your sister's wedding after knowing me for less than 24 hours. He raised an eyebrow. "Unless you'd prefer to tell them the truth? That I'm being coerced by a dangerous criminal who's threatening my sister's safety? I'm sure that would go over well." He sighed, a surprisingly human gesture from a man who seemed anything but. "Sit, Emma, please." The please sounded foreign on his lips, but I complied, perching on the edge of an armchair while he took the seat opposite me. "The story is simple," he began, his tone businesslike. "We met when you accidentally took my seat in first class. I was intrigued by your intelligence and compassion, traits evident in your profession as a nurse. I invited you to dinner upon landing. We connected immediately, and I asked to accompany you to the wedding events. Whirlwind romance, but not entirely implausible." I shook my head in disbelief. "No one will buy that. People believe what they want to believe," he replied. "Your sister will be delighted you found someone who appreciates you. The Prestons will be too preoccupied with their own concerns to question it deeply." "And what about public displays of affection?" I challenged. "A couple in the throes of new romance would be all over each other." His expression remained impassive, but something darkened in his eyes. "I'll leave that to your discretion, Emma. I won't force intimacy, even for appearances. A hand on the small of your back, perhaps your arm through mine. Enough to suggest connection without making you uncomfortable." His consideration was unexpected and unsettling in its own way. It would be easier to hate him if he were entirely monstrous. "Why me?" I asked suddenly. "You could have hired an actress, someone trained for this kind of deception." "Because you have something no actress could provide, genuine concern for Lily Preston. That authenticity can't be faked." He leaned forward slightly. "And because you're observant, intelligent, and adaptable. I watched you assess the situation on the plane, weighing your options, controlling your fear. You make me sound like some kind of operative." "In a sense, you are now." He opened the folder he'd brought, revealing photographs of various well-dressed people. "These are key players you'll encounter tomorrow. Memorize their faces." I reluctantly took the folder, scanning images of elegant men and women at various social functions. Each photo had notes attached, names, affiliations, relationships. "Howard Preston," Sokolov said, pointing to a distinguished-looking man in his 60s. "Founder of Wellington Capital, former CIA operative with connections to various intelligence agencies. His money laundering operation is sophisticated and protected by powerful interests." My stomach clenched as I looked at the man who would soon be my sister's father-in-law. "And his son? James?" Sokolov's expression hardened. "James Preston is his father's most valuable asset. Ivy League education, perfect pedigree, charming personality, the acceptable face of the family business. He brings in legitimate clients who have no idea their investments share space with drug money and human trafficking profits." "Does he know?" I whispered, dreading the answer. "About his father's activities? He's not merely aware, Emma. He's an active participant." Sokolov extracted another photo. James at a gala, his arm around Lily. My sister looked radiant, completely unaware of the darkness surrounding her. "James specializes in identifying vulnerable targets with valuable connections, people who can expand Wellington's reach into new territories." Horror dawned as his implication became clear. "You think he's using my sister? I know he is." Sokolov's voice was gentle but firm. "The question is why. Your family has no obvious strategic value to Wellington." Tears pricked at my eyes. "We're nobody. Middle-class family from Columbus. Mom's a teacher, Dad's a retired postal worker. Yet James Preston, heir to a criminal empire, pursues your sister with singular focus." He studied me intently. "What am I missing, Emma? What makes your family valuable to the Prestons?" I shook my head helplessly. "Nothing. We're ordinary people." "No one is ordinary upon closer inspection." He closed the folder. "We'll continue this conversation later. For now, there's the matter of making our relationship credible." He handed me the velvet box he'd brought. With reluctant curiosity, I opened it to reveal a stunning diamond pendant on a platinum chain. Elegant but not ostentatious, the kind of gift a new lover with exquisite taste might bestow. "I can't accept this," I said automatically. "You can and will." His tone brooked no argument. "A man in my position would never allow his woman to attend such events without proper adornment. The Prestons will expect it." "I'm not your woman," I snapped. "For the next 5 days you are." His eyes locked with mine, intense and unwavering. In public, you will play the role of a woman captivated by unexpected romance. You will accept my gifts, my protection, my guidance. In private, you maintain whatever boundaries you require for your comfort. He stood, the movement fluid and controlled. Dinner in 1 hour. Mrs. Petrova will show you to the dining room. As he turned to leave, a question burned in my throat. Have you done this before? Used women as pawns in your business dealings? He paused at the door, his back to me. No, he said quietly. This is as new for me as it is for you. Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me with more questions than answers, and a diamond pendant that felt as heavy as shackles in my hand. Dinner was a strangely formal affair in a dining room that could have seated 20, but was set for only 2. Sokolov sat at the head of the table, with me positioned at his right hand. Mrs. Petrova served each course with silent efficiency before disappearing, leaving us in tense privacy. I picked at exquisitely prepared food, my appetite diminished by stress. Sokolov ate methodically, his attention seemingly focused on his meal, but his awareness of me never wavering. Tell me about your sister, he said eventually, breaking the silence. Beyond what's in her file. You have a file on my sister? I shouldn't have been surprised, but the violation still stung. I have files on everyone connected to the Prestons, he replied matter-of-factly, but files can't capture the essence of a person. I took a sip of water, buying time to control my anger. Lily is light. That's the best way I can describe her. She sees the good in everyone, trusts easily, loves completely. My voice caught. She's everything I'm not. And what are you? Emma Reynolds? His dark eyes studied me over the rim of his wineglass. Cautious, pragmatic, suspicious. I met his gaze directly, as evidenced by our current situation. Yet you put yourself in danger to protect her. There was something like respect in his tone. That speaks to character. It's what family does, I replied simply. He nodded, a shadow crossing his features. In my experience, family loyalty is rare and valuable. Before I could inquire about that revealing comment, his phone vibrated. He checked it, his expression hardening as he read the message. Change of plans, he announced, standing abruptly. The Prestons are hosting a welcome dinner for out-of-town guests tonight. Your sister has requested our presence. Panic flared. Tonight? But we haven't prepared. We're as prepared as we'll ever be. He was already moving, purpose in every step. Wear the black dress in your closet, the pendant I gave you. Be ready in 30 minutes. Sokolov, I called as he reached the door. He paused, looking back at me. I don't even know your first name. Something like surprise flickered across his face. Alexei is my associate. I am Victor. Victor, I repeated, testing the name. It suited him. Strong, traditional, with history behind it. A strange expression crossed his features. 30 minutes, Emma. I hurried back to my suite, heart pounding. This was happening too fast. I wasn't ready to face the Prestons. Wasn't prepared to pretend intimacy with a dangerous man I barely knew. In the closet, I found the black dress he'd mentioned. A deceptively simple sheath that transformed into something extraordinary when I put it on. The fabric molded to my body like a second skin, revealing curves I usually kept hidden under practical scrubs and casual clothes. The neckline dipped just low enough to be elegant, without crossing into inappropriate territory. I fastened the diamond pendant around my neck with trembling fingers, the cool weight of it settling against my skin, like a beautiful brand of ownership. A pair of classic black heels completed the ensemble. I applied minimal makeup, enough to brighten my exhausted features, and twisted my hair into a simple updo. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, polished, elegant, and far more sophisticated than the overworked nurse who had boarded a plane in a daze just hours ago. A knock at the door signaled Victor's arrival. When I opened it, I found him restored to formal attire, an immaculately tailored black suit that emphasized his powerful build. His dark eyes widened slightly as they took in my appearance, a reaction so subtle I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching closely. You look... He paused, seeming to search for the right word. Perfect. The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, sent an unexpected warmth through me. I pushed the feeling aside, reminding myself of the circumstances. "I'm terrified," I admitted, the confession slipping out before I could stop it. Victor stepped closer, his expression softening marginally. "Fear is natural, Emma. Channel it into alertness." He offered his arm. "Shall we begin?" As we descended the stairs, security personnel materialized, forming our now familiar protective detail. Outside, the same black SUV waited, engine running. "Remember," Victor murmured as we settled into the vehicle, "you're infatuated, not frightened. You find me fascinating, not intimidating." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "That's quite an acting challenge." His lips curved slightly. "Draw on your professional experience." Nurses are excellent actors, are they not? Hiding fatigue, masking concerns from patients, projecting calm during chaos. He wasn't wrong. I'd spent years perfecting a professional demeanor that concealed my true feelings. As the SUV navigated through Chicago's evening traffic, Victor briefed me further on who we would encounter at the dinner. Names, relationships, potential threats, information flowing in that accented voice that somehow made everything sound both dangerous and seductive. When we finally pulled up to the Preston mansion in one of Chicago's most exclusive neighborhoods, my nerves had settled into a strange, focused calm. Victor must have sensed the change, because he gave me an approving nod as Alexei opened the door for us. "Ready, Dorogaya?" he asked, using a Russian endearment that sent a shiver down my spine. I took his offered arm, feeling the solid strength beneath the expensive fabric of his suit. "As I'll ever be." Together, we ascended the steps to the mansion, where my sister waited, blissfully unaware that the danger threatening her happiness had just arrived. On my arm. The Preston mansion blazed with light, every window illuminated against the gathering darkness. Security personnel disguised as valets took our vehicle, while actual staff in crisp uniforms guided guests through massive double doors into a foyer that could have housed my entire apartment. Victor's hand settled at the small of my back, warm and steady. A possessive gesture that reminded me of my role while simultaneously offering strange comfort. As we entered, heads turned subtly in our direction. I felt the weight of curious glances, the silent assessment of the newcomers. "Emma," Lily's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. My sister appeared from the crowd, radiant in a champagne-colored cocktail dress, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo so similar to mine it made my heart ache. We'd always mirrored each other unconsciously. She embraced me tightly, then pulled back to examine my outfit with wide eyes. "You look amazing. This dress is..." She gestured speechlessly. "A small gift," Victor supplied smoothly, extending his hand to her. "Victor Sokolov. I'm delighted to meet you, Lily. Emma speaks of you with such love." My sister's eyes widened as she took in the imposing figure beside me. "So, you're the reason my sister sounded so flustered on the phone." She laughed, accepting his handshake. "I've never known Emma to be impulsive. You must be special." I forced a smile, playing my part. "It was unexpected." "The best things often are," Victor replied, his accent more pronounced as he slipped his arm around my waist. The gesture looked casual but felt deliberate, a silent reminder of our arrangement. "You have to meet James," Lily gushed, already turning to scan the room. "He's somewhere." "Oh, there he is, with his parents." She led us through the crowd toward a trio standing near the grand staircase. I recognized James Preston immediately from his photos. Tall, classically handsome, with the confident bearing of old money. Beside him stood his parents, Howard and Margaret Preston, the very picture of sophisticated wealth. As we approached, I felt Victor tense beside me, though nothing in his expression betrayed the change. Only the slight pressure of his fingers against my waist indicated the significance of this moment. "James, darling," Lily called, her face lighting up as her fiancé turned. "Look who's finally here, my sister Emma and her boyfriend Victor." James Preston's practiced smile faltered for just a millisecond as his eyes fell on Victor. So brief I might have imagined it had I not been watching closely. He recovered instantly, extending his hand with perfect social grace. "Emma, we've heard so much about you, and—" His gaze shifted to Victor, something calculating flickering behind his friendly expression. "I don't believe Lily mentioned your companion's name." "Victor Sokolov," my false boyfriend supplied, his handshake with James lasting a beat longer than necessary, some silent masculine communication passing between them. A recent but significant addition to Emma's life. Howard Preston stepped forward then, his keen eyes assessing Victor with the sharp scrutiny of a predator recognizing another of its kind. "Sokolov, Russian, yes? What brings you to Chicago?" "Business interests," Victor replied smoothly. "Import-export primarily. But tonight, the pleasure of accompanying Emma outweighs any commercial concerns." I watched the subtle dance of these powerful men, circling, probing, searching for weakness while revealing nothing themselves. Margaret Preston observed as well, her perfectly maintained smile never reaching her eyes as she took my hand in her cold one. "So lovely to have you, Emma. Lily speaks of you constantly." Her gaze flicked to Victor, then back to me. "Such a surprise to hear you'd be bringing a guest. You must tell us how you two met." Before I could respond, Howard Preston interrupted. "Let's continue this conversation over drinks. The bar is this way." As our group moved toward an ornate bar setup in what appeared to be a library, Victor leaned close to my ear. "You're doing well," he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. "Stay close." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions, small talk, and carefully navigated conversations. Victor played his role flawlessly. Attentive, charming, his focus returning to me with such convincing devotion that I almost believed it myself. His hand rarely left contact with some part of me. My back, my arm, occasionally capturing my fingers in a gentle but firm grip. I found myself studying the interactions between James and Lily with new, suspicious eyes. My sister clearly adored him, her body language open and trusting as she leaned into his touches. But James, there was something performative about his affection. His eyes continued to drift to other guests, particularly when certain individuals entered the room. I noticed him exchange meaningful glances with his father several times. "May I steal my sister for just a moment?" Lily asked Victor after we'd been circulating for about an hour. "Girl talk, you understand." Victor inclined his head graciously. "Of course. I'll find us some fresh drinks." As Lily pulled me toward a quiet corner, I glanced back to see Victor immediately engaged in conversation by Howard Preston, a move that seemed calculated rather than coincidental. "Oh my God, Em," Lily whispered once we were relatively private. "He's gorgeous. And that accent. Where did you find him? How did this happen?" I recited our rehearsed story, feeling like a traitor with every word. "It was just one of those crazy things. Wrong seat, right person." Lily squeezed my hands, her expression softening. "I'm so happy for you. It's about time you found someone worthy of you." Her voice lowered conspiratorially. "And clearly wealthy. That pendant must have cost a fortune." My fingers touched the diamond at my throat self-consciously. "Lily, are you happy? Truly happy?" She blinked, surprised by my sudden seriousness. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that? It's just, last time we talked you seemed stressed. Not quite yourself." A shadow crossed her features before her smile returned. "Just pre-wedding jitters. Everything's perfect, especially now that you're here." She glanced across the room to where James stood talking with Victor and Howard. The three most important men in my life, all getting along. What could be better? The irony of her statement made my chest ache. Before I could probe further, James appeared at Lily's side, his arm sliding possessively around her waist. "Sorry to interrupt, but my mother is asking for the bride-to-be. Something about seating arrangements for tomorrow's brunch." He smiled at me, all charm and perfect teeth. "Emma, I've been getting to know Victor. Fascinating man. How exactly did you say you met?" The question carried a subtle challenge. I maintained my composure, recounting our fabricated first meeting with just enough authentic detail to make it credible. James nodded, seemingly satisfied, though his eyes remained watchful. "Well, we're delighted you could both make it tonight. Victor was just telling my father about his interest in art acquisition. Quite the collection, apparently. As if summoned by mention of his name, Victor materialized beside me, 2 champagne flutes in hand. He offered one to me, his fingers brushing mine in a gesture that felt oddly intimate. "Your father has impressive knowledge of Russian imperial artifacts," Victor said to James, his tone conversational, but his eyes alert. A niche interest. Something unspoken passed between the men, a current of tension beneath the polite exchange. Lily, oblivious to the subtext, smiled brightly. "We should all have dinner properly tomorrow after the rehearsal," she suggested. "Just the 4 of us." "A wonderful idea," Victor agreed, his hand finding the small of my back again. "If you'll excuse us, I've promised Emma a tour of the garden. I understand the night-blooming jasmine is particularly fragrant this time of year." Before anyone could object, Victor guided me smoothly toward the French doors leading to the terrace. Once outside, in the relative privacy of the garden, he led me to a secluded bench partially concealed by ornamental shrubs. "Howard Preston recognized me immediately," he said without preamble, his voice low. As I expected, fear tightened my chest. "Is that dangerous?" "It's complicated." Victor's expression was grim in the soft landscape lighting. "The Prestons owe debts to multiple organizations, mine included. They're scrambling to maintain appearances while their financial foundation crumbles." "What does that mean for Lily?" I whispered. Victor's eyes softened marginally. "It means we need to understand exactly why James pursued her so determinedly. What value does she represent?" He studied me intently. "Are you certain there's nothing in your family background that might be valuable? No connections to law enforcement, government, banking?" I shook my head. "We're exactly what we appear to be. Ordinary people. No one is ordinary." He repeated his earlier assertion, then tensed suddenly, his posture alerting me to approaching company before I heard the footsteps. Howard Preston emerged from the shadows, a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand. "Ah, the lovebirds. Enjoying our gardens?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Sokolov, might I have a private word?" Victor squeezed my hand. "Of course. Emma, would you mind giving us a moment?" The request wasn't really a question. I stood, sensing the dangerous currents swirling beneath this civilized exchange. "I'll find Lily," I murmured, my eyes meeting Victor's briefly. A silent communication passed between us. "Be careful." As I walked away, I heard Howard's voice drop to a menacing murmur. "I know exactly who you are, Sokolov. The question is, does your lovely companion?" I didn't hear Victor's response as I re-entered the house, my heart pounding. The elegant gathering suddenly felt sinister, the smiling faces' masks concealing predatory intent. I scanned the crowd for my sister, spotting her near the grand piano where a musician played soft classical pieces. Before I could reach her, James intercepted me, 2 fresh champagne flutes in hand. "Your glass was empty," he said, offering one to me. "And Victor seems occupied with my father. Shop talk, I'm afraid. Boring for non-business types." I accepted the glass cautiously. "What kind of business does your father have with Victor?" James's smile remained fixed, but something calculated entered his eyes. "Dad has interests in various markets. Eastern Europe presents opportunities." He sipped his champagne. "But enough about business. Tell me about yourself, Emma. Lily speaks so highly of you, but we've never really had the chance to talk." His charm was impeccable, his interest seemingly genuine, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being skillfully interrogated. I provided sanitized answers about my nursing career, deflecting personal questions while trying to observe him more closely. "And Victor?" he asked eventually. "He seems quite protective of you." "We've become very close very quickly," I replied, sticking to our script. James nodded thoughtfully. "Those whirlwind romances can be intoxicating. Though in my experience, it's wise to know exactly who you're getting involved with." His eyes met mine directly, especially when they come from certain backgrounds. Before I could respond to this thinly veiled warning, Victor appeared at my side, his hand reclaiming its position at my back. The slight tension in his posture told me his conversation with Howard hadn't gone well. "James was just getting to know me better," I explained, leaning slightly into Victor's solid presence. "How thoughtful," Victor replied, his accent thickening slightly, a tell, I was beginning to realize, of heightened emotion. "Unfortunately, we must take our leave. Emma has had a long day of travel, and tomorrow will be busy. James's expression remained pleasant, though his eyes hardened. Of course. We wouldn't want to exhaust the maid of honor before the festivities truly begin. We made our goodbyes, Victor expertly navigating us through the necessary social niceties. Lily extracted promises from me to arrive early for the brunch tomorrow, hugging me tightly before we departed. In the SUV, Victor remained silent until we had cleared the Preston property. Then he turned to me, his expression grave. The situation is worse than I anticipated. The Prestons are desperate, which makes them dangerous. His hand found mine in the darkness, his grip firm. Whatever game they're playing with your sister, we need to end it before the wedding. How? I asked, fear making my voice tremble. Victor's eyes gleamed in the passing streetlights. By discovering what they want from her. And to do that, we need to search James Preston's office tonight. Block 5. Tonight? I stared at Victor in disbelief as the SUV sped through Chicago's nighttime streets. You want to break into the Preston offices tonight? Not break in. Victor's expression remained impassive. I have access codes and security clearance, courtesy of our business arrangements, and we're not going to Wellington Capital's main offices. We're going to James Preston's private office in their secondary location. How do you have access to that? The pieces weren't fitting together. Victor's mouth tightened. The Prestons launder money for several organizations, mine included. It's a necessary arrangement in my line of work. He met my shocked expression with calm certainty. I told you I was a businessman with diverse interests. I never claimed they were all legal. The brutal honesty stunned me into momentary silence. We rode without speaking until the SUV turned into an underground parking garage beneath an unremarkable office building in Chicago's financial district. You don't have to come inside, Victor said as the vehicle stopped. Alexei can take you back to the house. Part of me wanted desperately to accept that offer, to retreat to the safety of my golden prison and pretend none of this was happening. But my sister's future hung in the balance. I'm coming, I said firmly. If this is about Lily, I need to see for myself. Something like respect flickered in Victor's eyes. He nodded once, then led me through a service entrance where a security guard nodded deferentially without checking any identification. We took a private elevator to the 14th floor, emerging into a dimly lit hallway of closed office doors. Victor moved with confident familiarity, Alexei following at a discreet distance behind us. We stopped at a door near the end of the corridor where Victor entered a code on a keypad, then pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner. The door unlocked with a soft click. They gave you biometric access, I whispered, incredulous. Not willingly. His smile was cold. Technology is remarkably adaptable when properly motivated. James Preston's office was exactly what I would have expected, tastefully expensive, designed to impress without appearing ostentatious. Dark wood, leather furnishings, strategic lighting, highlighting framed credentials and artistic photography. A corner office with windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, currently glittering with nighttime illumination. Victor went directly to the computer on the massive desk, inserting a small device into one of the USB ports. As it powered up, he began methodically searching through physical files in the cabinets lining one wall. What exactly are we looking for? I asked, hovering uncertainly near the door. Financial records, personal correspondence, anything relating to your sister or your family. He glanced up. Check the credenza behind the desk. Look for hidden compartments. I moved hesitantly to the indicated furniture piece, feeling like an intruder, which of course I was. The credenza contained mostly expensive liquor, crystal glassware, and office supplies. But as I examined it more carefully, I noticed one drawer seemed shallower than it should be based on the exterior dimensions. Victor, I called softly. I think there's a false bottom here. He was at my side instantly, strong fingers probing the edges of the drawer until something clicked, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a USB drive and a small leather-bound notebook. Victor took both, flipping through the notebook while inserting the drive into his device. His expression darkened as he read. What is it? I asked, tension coiling in my stomach. Dates, initials, amounts, he murmured. A secondary accounting system. His eyes met mine. Your sister's initials appear repeatedly over the past year, with increasing dollar amounts beside them. Cold dread washed over me. What does that mean? Before he could answer, the device connected to Preston's computer beeped. Victor moved swiftly to check it. Scrolling through files with practiced efficiency, I watched over his shoulder as documents flashed across the screen, financial reports, emails, photographs. He stopped suddenly at an image of my sister. It had been taken without her knowledge as she left her apartment building in Chicago. The timestamp showed a date from 14 months ago, around when she'd first met James. They were tracking her, I whispered, horror building. Why? We're nobody. Victor continued scrolling, opening emails and documents at a rapid pace. Finally, he stopped on a message exchange between James and his father from over a year ago. Target identified. Emma Reynolds, RN at Chicago Memorial. Access to restricted pharmaceuticals and controlled substances. Clean record. Financial struggles. Student loans. Recent medical bills. Sister, Lily, is more approachable. Recommend indirect recruitment through familial connection. The blood drained from my face as understanding dawned. They wanted me, I whispered, my voice barely audible. They wanted me for access to hospital drugs. And they used Lily to get to me. Victor's expression had gone cold with fury. The Prestons supply certain organizations with pharmaceutical products diverted from legitimate sources. A nurse with access to controlled substances would be extremely valuable to their operation. My legs threatened to give out. I gripped the desk for support as the horrific truth crystallized. James never loved Lily. She was just bait. Keep reading, Victor said grimly, scrolling to more recent correspondence. E. Reynolds continues to resist recruitment attempts. Sister relationship not providing expected leverage. Recommend accelerated timeline. Post-wedding, L will have sufficient legal entanglements to create effective pressure points. Father-in-law medical issues provide additional opportunity for pharmaceutical access via family sympathy. Tears blurred my vision. They were going to use me through her. And if I refused, they would ensure Lily was legally bound to them through marriage before applying more direct pressure, Victor finished, his voice tight with controlled anger. Classic entrapment strategy. A sudden noise in the hallway froze us both. Victor quickly removed his devices, returning the notebook but pocketing the USB drive. He guided me swiftly toward a side door that opened into an adjacent office. We need to leave, he murmured. We have what we came for. We made our way through darkened offices to a service stairwell, descending rapidly to the parking level where Alexei waited with the SUV. The escape felt surreal, like something from a movie rather than my actual life. Once safely in the vehicle, speeding away from the building, the reality of what I'd discovered crashed over me. I buried my face in my hands, shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. They never cared about her, I managed between ragged breaths. She loves him so much, and it was all a lie. I felt Victor's arm encircle my shoulders, pulling me against the solid warmth of his chest. The gesture was so unexpected that I didn't resist, instead turning my face into his shoulder, as tears soaked the expensive fabric of his suit. What am I going to tell her? I whispered. This will destroy her. Victor's hand stroked my hair with surprising gentleness. The truth, Emma. It will hurt her now, but save her from far worse pain later. I pulled back slightly to look at him. Why do you care? This was just about recovering money the Prestons owe you. Why does my sister matter to you at all? Something complicated moved behind his dark eyes. I told you from the beginning. I protect what's mine. His fingers brushed my cheek, wiping away tears. And now, whether you like it or not, you and your sister have become my concern. The intensity in his gaze made it hard to breathe. I should have been repulsed by his possessiveness, but instead I found it oddly comforting. This dangerous man had aligned himself with our protection. We'll tell her tomorrow, I said finally. After the brunch, but before the rehearsal dinner. She deserves to know before things go any further. Victor nodded. I'll have security arrangements in place. The Prestons won't take this development lightly. We rode in silence back to Victor's lakeside residence, his arm still around me, my head resting against his shoulder. The comfort I found in his embrace was complicated by everything he represented. Danger, criminality, a world so far removed from my ordinary existence that it felt like fiction. Yet here in the darkness, with Chicago's lights streaming past the tinted windows, The line between protector and captor, between fear and something far more confusing, had begun to blur. Morning arrived with painful brightness. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying the discoveries of the previous night in an endless loop of horror and grief for my sister. How could I tell her that the man she loved had never wanted her at all? That their entire relationship was a calculated effort to manipulate me? I dressed carefully for the brunch in a pale blue dress from the collection Victor had provided, applying makeup with extra attention to hide the evidence of my sleepless night. The diamond pendant remained around my neck, no longer just a prop for our charade, but a strange talisman, a reminder of Victor's unexpected protection. He was waiting for me in the foyer, immaculate as always in a light gray suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the intensity of his dark eyes. Something shifted in his expression when he saw me, a softening I was beginning to recognize. "You look lovely," he said simply. "I feel like I'm marching to an execution," I replied, my voice hollow. His hand caught mine, warm and steady. "We do this together, Emma. You're not alone." Those words, so simple, yet so powerful, nearly undid my fragile composure. I'd been alone for so long, carrying responsibilities, working endless shifts, trying to build some semblance of security in a precarious world. To suddenly have someone standing beside me, however complicated the circumstances, was overwhelming. The drive to the Preston estate for the pre-wedding brunch passed in tense silence. Victor briefed me on security arrangements. His men would be positioned strategically around the property, ready to extract us if necessary. Alexei would remain within sight at all times. "After you've spoken with Lily, we leave immediately," Victor instructed. "No matter her reaction, no matter the fallout. Her safety and yours are the priority." The estate looked different in daylight, less intimidating but more ostentatious, the manicured grounds stretching in perfectly maintained greenery. Catering staff bustled about, setting up for the outdoor brunch under a massive tent erected on the back lawn. Lily spotted us immediately, waving enthusiastically as she broke away from a group of bridesmaids. She looked radiant in a white sundress, her happiness so genuine it made my heart ache with what was to come. "You're here!" she exclaimed, embracing me tightly before smiling up at Victor. "And looking disgustingly perfect together, I might add." I forced a smile, noticing James watching us from across the lawn, his expression carefully neutral. Howard Preston stood nearby, engaged in conversation with several distinguished-looking men Victor had identified as business associates with questionable connections. "Lily," I began, my voice catching, "after brunch, I need to talk to you privately. It's important." Her smile faltered slightly. "Is everything okay?" "Just sister stuff," I assured her, hating the deception even as I knew it was necessary. "Before all the wedding chaos takes over." She nodded, her brightness returning. "Of course. Now come meet everyone. The bridesmaids are dying to know who your mysterious +1 is." The next 2 hours were excruciating, maintaining the facade of celebration while carrying the devastating truth. Victor remained close, his presence both comforting and commanding as we navigated the social obligations. I noticed how the other guests responded to him, with a mixture of fascination and instinctive caution, as if sensing the predator in their midst. Finally, as the brunch wound down, I caught Lily's eye and nodded toward the garden. She excused herself from a conversation and followed me to a secluded bench beneath a flowering tree, far enough from the tent to ensure privacy. Victor positioned himself at a discreet distance, close enough to intervene if necessary, but giving us space for what would surely be a painful conversation. "What's going on, Em?" Lily asked, her bright expression dimming as she registered my serious demeanor. "You've been off all morning." I took her hands in mine, gathering courage. "Lily, there's something you need to know about James and his family. Something I discovered last night." As gently as possible, I told her everything. The Preston family's criminal enterprises, James's calculated pursuit of her to get to me, the evidence we'd found. With each revelation, her face crumpled further, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No," she whispered repeatedly. "No, that can't be true. He loves me. I know he does." "I'm so sorry," I said, my own tears falling. I would give anything for this not to be true. She shook her head violently. You're wrong. You must be. Victor has misled you. Lily. Victor's voice came from behind us, gentle but firm. He held out his phone, displaying the evidence we'd gathered. See for yourself. With trembling hands, she took the device, scrolling through the damning emails and financial records. Her face went ashen. All this time, she whispered. I was just a way to get to you? I pulled her into my arms as she broke down completely, her body shaking with sobs. Over her shoulder, I saw James approaching rapidly, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. Victor moved smoothly to intercept him, his posture relaxed, but unmistakably threatening. They exchanged words I couldn't hear, but James's face contorted with anger before he abruptly turned and strode back toward the house. We need to leave now, Victor said, returning to us. Things are about to become complicated. Lily pulled back from my embrace, her eyes red, but suddenly determined. I want to confront him. I need to hear him say it. Not here, Victor cautioned. It's not safe. As if to emphasize his point, Howard Preston emerged from the house, gesturing urgently to security personnel who began moving purposefully in our direction. Lily, please, I begged. Come with us. We can sort everything out somewhere safe. She hesitated, torn between the life she'd thought was hers and the devastating truth. Then, with a deep breath, she nodded. Let's go, she said, her voice steadier than I expected. I need to get away from here. Victor guided us swiftly toward a side exit where Alexei waited with the SUV. As we hurried across the lawn, I heard James calling Lily's name, his voice edged with desperation. She didn't look back.